How am I supposed to not be upset at losing last second, at holding off the enemy team the entire game and doing extremely well only to fumble at the very end? I'm trying so hard to get better at the game and rank up, but I keep losing series and getting frustrated and then having to take breaks over and over because I play worse when I'm tilted. How do you deal with it? I get a lot of questions like this one in stream chats and tweets and Discord messages and various other places. I want to talk about this one anonymously because there are some recurrent patterns I see across a lot of questions like these that I can speak to all at once, even though everyone is different and has a different way of processing the game and their own emotions. I want to talk about self-talk, a term I've found myself using more and more recently to discuss mindset. It's well understood that there are some thought processes in our brains that are fully under our control and at the forefront of our attention, while others are subconscious, that is, that operate without us being immediately aware of them. It's a really weird, sometimes frustrating aspect of our existence, because the subconscious mind can be a big influence on the conscious mind, but because we're not conscious of it, we don't always realize what's going on. I've had a lot of days where I realized, wait, I'm getting really upset at this, more upset than I usually get at things. What's going on? And I was able to trace the feeling back to some moment from earlier in the day that my conscious mind had already completely forgotten about. Your conscious mind may not be dealing with it anymore, but a lot of the time, your subconscious mind kept processing that thing. And since that thing was unpleasant, it kept ruminating on the unpleasant thing, turning it over in your head repeatedly, and all day. You've been feeling unpleasant feelings because of it. Sometimes that's actually really important. Maybe in the moment you were willing to brush that thing aside, but it's something you needed to reflect on more to realize that you needed something to change, so that unpleasantness went away. Our subconscious mind, left to its own devices, left to take the information we've got and turn it over and experiment with it and play, can be really powerful and intuitive in some ways. Our conscious mind is largely off while we sleep, but our subconscious mind is the source of our dreams. Dreams are usually just weird and unhelpful, but as the subconscious mulls over what we've seen and experienced over the course of the day, sometimes it puts some details together in a way that our conscious mind never thought to, and we wake up remembering the dream and having an epiphany. There are a lot of accounts of an idea coming to someone in a dream, and while many ascribe that to supernatural inspiration, I personally think there's more evidence to suggest that it's just a feature of our own brains, something that happens to us normally from time to time. But a side effect of our lack of awareness of the subconscious mind is that we sometimes cause ourselves to feel differently or more intensely than we think we feel. If we feed the subconscious mind repeated negative thoughts and ideas, those aren't always gone when we stop choosing to think about them. Sometimes they stick around. This, incidentally, is why it's often not a good idea to speak negatively of someone behind their backs without addressing the issue to their faces. If you strengthen or intensify those negative feelings by saying them out loud, even if you just say those things once and not to that person, you might end up repeating them to yourself as your subconscious mind lingers on them. Those feelings might come out in an involuntary facial expression or a harsher tone for your words than you meant to use when you talk to them next. In a similar way, when you sit down to play Splatoon and you lose a game and realize you're getting tilted because you're acting a lot more emotionally than you felt before you started playing, you're not going to be immediately aware of what actually caused those feelings, of the moment where the switch flipped. But you can probably trace them back to some kind of self-talk. It might be something you said out loud, or it might be something you thought in your head, but there was probably some sentence or word or phrase that triggered it. Somewhere along the line, your thoughts went from thinking about enemy positions, pushing along the objective line, checking flank routes, managing your ink tank, to, I'm losing all my shots. My team is feeding. I messed up this defense, and now we're going to lose. A subconscious fixation on those kinds of thoughts can cause you to feel things. And certain feelings have this annoying way of shutting off the parts of our brain that do well at critical thinking and problem solving. Early in my career as a competitive Melee player, I was looking into ideas about lucid dreaming and meditation, both practices that exercise control over the subconscious mind in different ways. I sat in a quiet, windowless room, closing the door so it was pitch black, for about 15 minutes, with the only goal being not to think about anything at all. No feelings, no thoughts, automating my breathing so I didn't have to think about that, not letting any whispers of ideas, any repetitions, any songs coming into my head, not even thinking about the concept of the blackness I was perceiving, not thinking about things, just nothing. It is incredibly difficult. But for the smallest fraction of a second, after 15 minutes of trying, I got there. When I opened my eyes, I was a lot more calm, relaxed, focused. There were fewer ideas swirling in my head distracting me. I wasn't emotional, I wasn't stressed, I wasn't worried. Once I had cleared my mind once and knew what it felt like, it was much easier to reach that same place emotionally in much less time. In fact, I found it useful playing Melee. If I lost a stock in a way that I knew was going to have an impact on me emotionally, I took the seconds I had while my character respawned to close my eyes, take out the subconscious garbage, open them again, and think about the game. Not about woulda, coulda, shouldas, not about how I should be beating this guy, why am I not beating this guy? Ugh, I'm getting worse. But about how he's dash dancing, and by the time I reach him, he'll be moving left, and if I move in, he doesn't have a lot of room to retreat, so he'll probably jump and throw out an aerial that will whiff, and then I can grab him. I've clawed back situations where I was at big disadvantages when, I think, without doing this, I would have both lost and felt worse about losing. This brings us back to Splatoon. So you lost a game right at the end after playing well for most of the game. First of all, consider your self-talk leading up to the mistake. Was there a moment where you told yourself something like, okay, we just need to hold on, or we're so close to winning? Turn your rational thinking brain back on for a second and consider what those sentences can tell you about how to play the game of Splatoon for the rest of its duration. The answer is absolutely nothing. What they will do, though, is make you nervous, make you feel like this big climactic moment is about to happen, and that this moment by itself, out of everything else in the game, will define your ranking, your value as a player, your ability to learn. Nervous is a state that turns off good thinking brain and turns on lizard brain. We need to avoid nervous. That's not the most helpful thing to say to someone, because just knowing that someone's nervous doesn't make them less nervous. That starts thoughts swirling around of, I'm nervous, I always mess up when I'm nervous, my hands are shaking, which makes us feel like we're about to mess up and only shuts our brain off more. And the whole time we're worrying about this, we're not thinking about what direction the Rainmaker carrier is rotating to, or which enemy player is the most immediate threat to us, or whether we have an advantage we're going to be able to push and win a fight with. You can't push those feelings aside through exertion or effort. You can't resist them head on. But you can enter the void and detach from anything and everything for just a moment. And when you blink back into existence, the messy negative self-talk won't stay stuck to you. And if the first thing you do is ask yourself a game-related question, which player is the safest to jump to, will I be fighting or painting for special when I get there, now you're refocused on what will actually win you games more of the time. It's important there, I think, to finish the game and then pause for a second and think, what emotion did I have to undo? Did I have to leave in the void there? Because it's not really in the void. It's probably still in there, churning around in our heads somewhere. You might have to process it at some point. But this is a way that you can get away with not having to think about it for at least the duration of the rest of the game. It's a way that you can invite your thinking brain back in. It's a way that you can shut down lizard brain and bring back smart human brain that will help you win at Splatoon. As soon as your rank starts mattering to you, as soon as the actions of randomly chosen online teammates start bothering you, as soon as you feel stress and pressure to perform, as soon as a placement is lower than you'd want it to be and you get upset about it, you need to start becoming very aware of your self-talk. What are you feeding your subconscious mind? What are you making yourself feel without realizing that you're making yourself feel it? Did something happen earlier that you didn't realize made you feel negatively? Stop and think back to what that thing was and try to see if you can spot patterns. For me, it tends to happen when I feel like I did a good job, but we don't gain an advantage from the good job that I do. Whenever something like that happens, I now know to take a deep breath and emerge from the void with a better question than, how can I carry these teammates? If they're pushing in too aggressively, I now have to consider whether to look out for them to push and support them, or whether to stay further back while they push, paint for special while they're respawning, and anchor so that when they super jump in, I haven't gone down myself and staggered the team, and now I have a crab tank ready so the next time they push in, I'm more likely to be able to help them this time. I'm not great at this, as someone who's seen me play on stream for an extended amount of time would be able to tell you. It's something you have to do emotional detective work to figure out about yourself, and until you spot patterns that you can use to predict this happening next time, it's something you can really only piece together after the crime has been committed. It's not easy. But let's look at the comment someone wrote me from the beginning of the video with all of this in mind. How am I supposed to not be upset at losing last second? This is not really a question. This is a statement of frustration. This is trying to not be upset over and over and feeling like it's impossible and throwing up your hands and deciding someone else must have answers that you don't. Sometimes when people lose a close game, they just go, good game, that was a close one. Some people aren't bothered at all to lose. So why is it that you are upset at losing last second? What is attaching real feelings about yourself, about your abilities, about your place in the world, your value as a person, to this colorful game with shape-shifting squids? This isn't to make you feel bad or wrong for attaching feelings to that. It's pointless to call anything bad or wrong in your brain. It is the way that it is. We're wired the way that we are. This is an honest question. What exactly, precisely, specifically, is attaching feelings to it? What's the mechanism? How does it work? Dig in and find that out, because this question isn't the rational problem-solving brain talking. It's catastrophizing. It's the thought that it is impossible for me to not be upset while playing this game because sometimes that happens, and therefore it is inevitable. I'm trying so hard to get better at this game and rank up, but I keep losing series and getting frustrated and then having to take breaks over and over because I play worse. There's this sense that this is a repeated, inescapable cycle, that losing last second is common enough that it by itself happens frequently enough in a play session that every play session is affected by it. If you detach all the emotions swirling around those ideas, your rational thinking brain can tear them to pieces. Do you really always end up losing at the last second? Is it always your fault when that happens? Probably not. The more specific you can get your thinking about that, the better. And that's part of the problem with these questions that aren't really answerable questions. I don't know the people who ask me these kinds of things. I don't know them as people. I don't know what weapons they play. I don't know their playstyles. I don't know what they struggle with in-game. And to know all these things well enough to suggest what the actual solutions are, I'd need to do at least a VOD review with them. VOD reviews can be nice for separating the emotions from the gameplay. Someone who rages at teammates may not like hearing, okay, hey, look at the end screen, man. Your KD ratio is by far the worst on the team, and that should be cluing you in that you need to do some introspection instead of blaming the teammates for this. But it can be eye-opening. It can be a moment where they learn that what's really causing their problems isn't some cosmic inevitability, that the people are just, up in arms against you all the time, but it's the way that you've been talking to yourself. But without more specific information, it's very easy for people who ask a question like this, a rhetorical question, a statement of frustration, whatever you want to call it, it's easy for them to bat away suggestions at solutions, because their thinking brain isn't engaged when they ask them. The thinking brain sees this question and recognizes that there are so many variables unaccounted for that would change the answer to the question so much that there isn't any one good single answer to this question. How am I supposed to not get upset? I don't know. How are you getting upset? Let's figure that out together, and then maybe we can come up with some habits that you can start forming to help your mindset while you play solo queue matches. That's a great place to get to, but it's not a place I can get with someone who tweeted me or DM'd me because, again, I don't know them. What I can say is that you need to start paying more careful attention to the things you're thinking while you play that are attached to emotions. What did you say about your teammates, about the weapons people are playing, about yourself, about the game and its designers, that didn't actually help you win advantages in the video game of Splatoon because you thought about it? What negative feeling, what insecurity are these thoughts stemming from? What can you do to calm down and get your head back to more useful thoughts when you notice that a situation happened that tends to trigger them? These are much more helpful questions than, how do I not get upset? To ask how to not get upset is to ask how not to be a human being. Humans get upset sometimes. If you're upset, sit with being upset. Ask it questions. Feel it, and let it be. And let it go away when you've investigated it, felt it all the way, it's run its course. Just don't use self-talk to bring the upset back over and over. Don't yank it back into your mind and say, wait, don't go. Don't repeat that being upset is inevitable all the time and will always ruin your games. Don't get over the feeling and sit back down to play, fully acknowledging in some corner of your mind that the same thing will happen again because you never really stopped mentally repeating what caused that feeling in the first place. You're going to get upset. What you need to learn how to do is to be upset and then reset. To stop bringing yourself back to the same place of upset by repeating the same things to yourself that got you there in the first place. To let your thinking brain back up for air before you start playing again.